Greetings, everyone. Just gonna give you guys a little update. The last video I made, I was sighting in that 270. It might have been the one before it when I was sighting in the 3030. But I talked about how Hurricane Idalia had done a lot of damage to our property, and then when Hurricane Debbie came through, it knocked over a bunch of the trees that didn't get knocked over. So Debbie wasn't that bad of a storm, but it did some of the damage that Idalia started. Well, since then, as you guys probably know if you've been paying attention to the news, we've been hit by Hurricane Helene. And I didn't think it could get worse than Idalia because I figured, all the trees that were gonna fall had fallen. But that wasn't the case. Hurricane Helene is probably the worst thing I've ever seen. Our town did get hit by the eye wall, and if you watch the news, you saw former President Trump speaking in our town. But I just want to show you guys some things. So this is the shooting bench where I was shooting the 3030 and the 270, and it's kind of crazy because the bench itself is fine. It somehow miraculously survived. This tree broke, all right, snapped off up there and is leaning over the bench. And then I've got a tree that's, a few inches from the front of the bench, but the bench is fine, which is awesome. But all of this right here is going to have to get cleaned out, and I'll show you guys some footage of that. Now, I'm glad the bench made it, but that's not, the least of the problems. Also down there where I actually shoot the targets, it's a mess down there too, so all that'll have to be cut. But this is pretty, big damage, but it's nothing like what we've seen in other places. It took me a whole day just to try to get where we could get out of our driveway. I'm probably going to need a new chainsaw when all this is said and done. I've been wearing that thing out, and it's a Husqvarna. I mean, it's a quality chainsaw, but and running two Steels, a Husqvarna and two Steel chainsaws, and they've done great. I recommend either of those brands. That's the only two brands I would recommend. But nothing's equipped for this kind of damage. Took a whole day probably to get out of our road, but our property's never going to be the same. I mean, it literally looks like a bomb went off around here. There are trees snapped in half. There are trees completely knocked over by the roots. And another bad thing is there's a lot of trees that are leaning. They are bowed. And that's kind of a problem because they're going to have to be cut down because obviously, leaning like that, they pose a danger. A lot of trees are broken high up, and then, that's dangerous too because who knows when they're going to fall. We did get our power back today. So let's see, the hurricane hit Thursday night, Friday morning. We got the power back Wednesday morning. So we're fortunate. There's still a lot of people without power. I really thought it was going to be a lot longer. This is one of the faster hurricanes that we did get power restored. Typically, it takes about a week or more for us to get power back. And I think a lot of that is because so many workers came from out of state. When Idalia happened, a lot of people came from out of state. And I think there's even more this time. And I'm grateful for every one of those linemen and first responders and emergency response personnel and all that. We were dealing with the wind damage, and then we see on the news, what's happened in Appalachia with the flooding and all that's caused by the same hurricane, and a lot of horrible stories come out of there. And, all we can say is praise God for what we have, because it could be a lot worse. But I feel for those people that have lost their loved ones and property and all that stuff. So, but anyway, this is probably gonna slowed me down from making any more videos for a while. But we're gonna try our best. We're gonna try to keep making, you know, history videos and hunting videos. And as far as history goes, I'll say this is a historical event. You're probably seeing stats on the news about, you know, this hurricane being historic, but I can tell you this: I hope I never see anything like this again in my lifetime. Well, thank you guys for watching.